We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
And this might be that opportunity where I can finally become cool.
Soco,
Matt?
do you know that starting on December 20th, 2020, there's going to be a grand cross between Jupiter and Saturn?
Oh dear God, go for it. Just
I don't
say
know
it.
what it means. I mean, I did a lot of reading of astrological stuff. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. I looked at them here's the problem. It's 2020, so I'm willing to believe anything at this point. Like if you told me, "Hey, this is a sign that the Antichrist will be born on this day," I might believe it. What about you, Soko?
I actually
Producer David. Thank you, Producer David.
thanks.
Producer
Thank
David
you.
has told us that that'll be the day that we release this episode, so I think that might be the most consequential thing that happens on that day.
Oh man, astrology. I really don't. Okay, I mean, I'm guilty of it as well, reading these horoscopes to foresee my future. Uh,
What's your sign, Soko?
Aquarius.
You're an Aquarius? Oh.
Yes.
Well, allegedly this will be this will be a signal of the age of Aquarius opening up.
Oh
So,
my.
it's going to be your time, Soko.
I read that article and I was like, oh, why?
This is your age to let loose of all your binds and oppression and just be your freak Aquarius self. Run into the streets naked, come up with all the revolutionary ideas we've all been waiting for because you have them. This is your age.
Oh my. It's so, astrology, it's just so funny. It's actually it's funny how it's so prolific in society, in American society. And
Oh, it's prolific everywhere though. You go to South America and everybody's into astrology over there.
oh man.
It's popular around the world. It's not just an American thing.
I would say it's funny because of how it's become very secularized.
Oh,
So
sure.
it's not it's funny if it's history, because if you look back into its history, it's actually connected to it had a different purpose, I would say. Uh, but now it's just, I don't know, it's a remnant of the past that's kind of lost its, I think, its core, and we have a shell of it now, and people love the shell of it.
Oh yeah,
So
you're 100% right there. And I wish I knew better about what the deeper context for astrology was, because if you go back, if you go way back, if you go to ancient Egypt, that's apparently how they ruled their entire kingdom, is through astrological whatever, you know. And of course there's astrology, there's different kinds of astrology in different parts of the world, there's Chinese astrology, there's Vedic astrology, so there's different contexts too, right?
that's right. That's right. I'm aware of that with Islam as well. There's
Hmm.
Islamic astrology as well. There's actually many works. I want to say, oh, I can't think of it. I'll have to look it up later. But I know there's a lot of works dealing with it. Um, it's funny. It's just funny how this little piece of the past, how it kind of now it's talking. It's, especially since this one is talking about more of, what was it? Uh, what was it? What did it say in the article?
It said a
Dealing with
lot of things. The article from Astro Shaman, I believe, is what it was called, which is one of my favorite names for an astrology site. Uh, It was kind of a long, rambling article about how this is the year for you to do. I mean, kind of read as like it could mean anything. It could mean the end of empire. It could mean the return of empire. It could mean rebellion. It could. It's just like, okay, well,
Hmm.
what does it mean? I don't understand anymore.
Certainly giving into the political space right now. So
See, that's okay. So that's where I kind of like my ears perk up because, like I said, it's 2020. Things have been wild. Like, I can't help but notice that also the heavens are sort of corresponding a little bit. You right? Like, here's the thing. We
okay.
want to get into how these people are interpreting the event. These people, the astrologers. Uh, Saturn is supposed to represent seats of authority, um, routine, rigor, dominance, hierarchies. Jupiter is supposed to represent like something else I don't remember, but because it's taking place in Aquarius, it's like this paradoxical effect because Aquarius is supposed to be free and rebellious and blah blah blah. So what is I mean, I look at that, I'm like, okay, well that just means chaos. Like I don't
Well, that describes me. So
oh okay. Well so
now every time I
so
read
no,
it,
I'm gonna be watching. That's all. I keep my eyes on you and see what happens next.
I mean, every time I read these, and don't worry, I get, I mean, it's a, what do you call that? When is it called self-confirming bias? Uh,
Yes.
whereas,
Basically.
whereas you think something of yourself, and then you use
Yeah.
something else to basically
The
confirm it,
the
right?
technical term is confirmation bias.
Confirmation. Okay, I am definitely. I mean, when I read it, I was like, yeah, "That's me," but I think that could just be me naturally.
But here's the other thing about that article is that here's I mean it doesn't it becomes omni applicable, which you don't even have to be an Aquarian for it to apply to you. It could just be like it's about everybody. So then it kind of loses its meaning in regards to if you want to go into the whole like mechanics of astrology, which is like depending on your sign, it's going to affect you differently, right? Like if you're an Earth sign, you might not like this period as much because it's going to be more about decentralization and less about money and objects and whatever. It's it's such a complicated mess of an idea, and I kind of like it because it's complicated and messy, but at the same time, its actual functional usefulness is kind of like not there. Like I'd rather just read the tarot, quite honestly.
No, wait,
I've
oh,
gotten more out of
oh,
tarot readings than I have out of astrology. So, but anyway, I would say everybody needs an excuse to celebrate something, even if it's weird and new agey. So I say crack open that new bottle of wine or something for the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter.
well, if it gets you by, right? If it pushes you forward, why not just read it, right? A little, a little
That's
phrase.
how I look at it now. It's like a placebo effect. It's like, well, if you feel better about your life after reading this, and you suddenly are prone to like wanting to start that company you've been dreaming about for years, then whatever, you know. If that's the impetus for you starting the new Amazon or becoming a social worker or whatever, fine. I don't care.
Gets you by. Well, that's what me like when I go exercise. Sometimes, I mean, I get a lot of moments where I'm just very demotivated. And for me, exercise, the beginning part of exercising is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
And I'll sometimes just watch. You ever heard of David Goggins?
Yeah.
I'll watch one of his clips, a minute clip, to
That's
go push me.
basically like, yeah, I mean, that's how he exists now. Basically, I think he had that idea of like, I guess there's a bunch of schlubs like me who just have a hard time getting motivated to exercise. I mean, I listen to Ayn Rand personally, but whatever gets you by, it doesn't matter. It's Ayn Rand today. Tomorrow it'll probably be David Goggins or Jocko Willink or Joe Rogan or I don't know. I read the tarot today and I decided I needed to work out. And it changed my life for the better.
Well, I'm for it. Just do it. I'm for it. Just do it. Even looking at Nike, just do it. There you go. Just do it. Not that
Here's
we
my
are.
question. Do you feel like Nike is a more potent motivator of human beings than astrology or tarot reading?
I think at one, I think at one time, but they're so corporate that now, and people hate
They're so
corporations.
corporate now.
So
Now that Michael Jordan isn't part of the picture, they really lost their way. Where was
well,
Nike when they were for the little guy?
exactly right. Well, let's kind of move forward, Matt. Let's introduce ourselves in the show.
Let us allow this conjunction to progress.
You go ahead. What's your name?
Well, y'all are listening to Welcome Back Biden, and this is Matt Rainwater, and I am speaking to you.
This is Dirtbag Lou, also known as Skis Louise, or also known as Soco.
I'm very familiar with Soco. Skis Louise is a new one to me, but is that how you're known in the Northeast?
I'm known that everywhere.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No. Skis Louise. Maybe a new name will happen next week. We'll see. But this is Welcome Back Biden. Thank you all for tuning in. You've already heard our first topic of today, which was on astrology. But I think we're going to go on to our next topic. Because, we only have an hour to talk to you guys. Or to talk to ourselves, or whoever we talk to, right, Matt?
I mean, it's really just rambling amongst ourselves. It's always appreciated.
Well, we were talking about astrology. Let's talk about some psychedelic stuff too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is the real news to talk about, quite frankly. So this was going to be a topic on last week's episode, but we didn't get it. We weren't able to get around to it.
Yeah.
But pretty big news. The Canadian Health Minister approved the use of psilocybin mushrooms for professional administration and research. So to go further on into what's happening, the Canadian Health Minister, Patty Hajdu, has allowed 17 healthcare professionals to possess and use psilocybin to conduct professional training in psilocybin therapy. And so Canada is now, I mean, I guess it's the Canadian National Health System is recognizing the use of psilocybin mushrooms for therapeutic use. Going off of going off of all of the, depending on who you are, I would say progress that Oregon had recently with their bill allowing legalization of medical mushrooms. Canada's following suit. So the era of the fungus is among us. Soco.
That's that's a good way to put it all under. The era of fungus among us is among us. Of however you just said it.
We're here.
I read that article. I thought you'd be well. Have you now been thinking about getting into the therapy field, especially where they're having these therapists also take the drugs, or professionals?
Oh, I mean, I'd be interested in that, like, not from a professional perspective necessarily. Like, I'm not like itching to like get him, pick up my backpack and go to Canada to become a mushroom shaman, but like I definitely want to see how it progresses. I personally would love to do a little bit of more mushroom therapy. I've done it in the past, and had really positive effects on my life. So there are other aspects of that though that I feel like are, I'll just say, like the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, for a lot of people there are some odd after effects of taking mushrooms where it is like you have now entered into some weird story where suddenly all these synchronicities come together and things that would normally not make sense suddenly happen. Um, so I kind of view taking mushrooms as a medicine almost like allying with some magical entity where you better strap in because it's going to get weird. But that's interesting to me to see it take place on a or on a more global scale, because now we're going to be seeing, maybe this is part of the conjunction, Soko. Maybe this is part of it. More people taking mushrooms, evolving into new states of consciousness, telling me about their astrological symbols and their tarot readings the other day,
I
talking to me about how they had such a good session at yoga, drinking unfiltered water from ponds, unpasteurized milk.
Why does this sound so white to me?
See, so like that's the thing, right? Is like I am pretty excited about the fungus revolution. I'm just not as excited about the. I mean, it's the typical punk
Mhm.
mindset of like, oh, mushrooms were cool when nobody was into it and it was illegal, but now it's gonna be like, oh yeah, you did mushroom therapy too, cool dude, your life's better, great.
So you're more upset by that it's just going to become just so normalized?
I'm kind of joking. I am kind of, I think what you're hinting at and what I'm hinting at is this banality, basically. Because for me, I going back to what I was saying just a few moments ago.
Mhm.
Part of the reason why I responded really strongly to mushroom therapy is it was a profound spiritual experience for me, like a number of times, and I'm not looking forward to it becoming like overly scientifically picked apart to the point that people don't really recognize those. I don't know, like for me I would call them more spiritual aspects. It's like going to be despiritualized. That's the negative side of it, is my thing. But maybe for people that's not a big deal.
Or more, do you mean like more secularized?
Right. Just like astrology.
It all comes together, is what you're telling me.
Exactly. Maybe these are the lessons we need to learn in the age of Aquarius.
I I don't know what's going to happen as I imagine. Well, it will become part of. This is maybe a step towards that direction of normalcy
Right.
with psychedelic drugs.
Right. And we don't really know what that's going to look like. That's the other thing. Like I'm here complaining about it being banal or whatever, but we don't know what that's going to look like.
Well, it could look like that. I was actually looking at this the other day. Uh, at health insurance plans because, well, it's something I have to think about, like a lot of
Yeah.
people. And it was actually, this plan was just going over uh, what you can. There's some insurance companies that do like a what they call like a spending account. If you're familiar with that,
Like a health
uh,
savings account.
yeah, and I believe it's, as I understand what this account is for, is they take money and they put it to a side into an account that you can use just to buy medical supplies or pay for certain medical bills.
Yeah.
And the benefit of it is that you can use it as a tax write-off. Uh,
Hmm.
that's how I generally understood it. I could be wrong. as
I
anybody.
like being able to write off my mushrooms as a tax write-off.
And that's what I was thinking, because it's kind of
Yeah,
funny. That's what could happen. And when we were looking at it, I'm not sure if your in this plan, acupuncture could be written off,
very interesting.
and I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but chiropractic, which is a funny field. Uh,
Yeah, I've heard some mixed opinions about chiropractic. Chiropractic is that how you put it?
that's how I said it. Who knows if I'm saying even it correctly? But go on. You're about to say something.
No, that was it. I've heard some funny things. I don't know what they were. No, I mean I've heard some things that like it's kind of a fake field or whatever. I don't know. I've never been to a chiropractor. I've never like I'm the kind of person who I will want to do it personally,
Uh huh.
like to make an assessment.
Hmm.
Um, which is part of the reason why I have such um, a half-hearted relationship with astrology or like stuff like that is because I will dabble and see for myself like whether or not it's there's anything to it. And astrology is such a perfectly confusing and oh maybe it did, maybe it didn't kind of thing. But anyway, chiropractic I've never done that with, and so
Well, I was more shocked when I did some reading with it. Mostly, it all happened because I was on Twitter, as always. That wonderful site, right?
great place to learn things, right?
Yes. Well, you always find random things here and there, and somebody mentioned about chiropractic. Whereas, what was it? I think the tweet was the person wanted to posted a tweet. Tell me something that you think is what was it? Really complicated, but it really isn't, or it sounds very professional or profound, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah.
It was along those lines, and they mentioned chiropractic. I was like, okay, and then they tell me about the history, a little bit mention about the history of chiropractic and how it was based on some guy who just didn't believe in medicine, and they don't have
Like
any.
the best American stories. I like where this is going. Keep going, Soko.
They believed in, I mean, they believed in manipulating the body, but then they
Mm,
didn't really have any scientific method behind it either.
yeah.
Uh, and I believe they believed in magnetic, using magnets or something. Dave, you might need to check that out for us. But I was a little, I was like, oh wow, this is kind of funny for me, just because I seen so many offices as there's a chiropractor and they have this big nice looking office,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that looks really, I would call them a doctor or something,
Well, and
but
this is so
and it's
this is the thing
controversial
that I
too, so
yeah,
go ahead.
this is the thing that I've heard is like a lot of people go to a chiropractor and they feel better, and but then they have to do repeat visits.
Mhm.
And so generally what a lot of skeptics about the practice think is that it's really not doing anything long term, and that it's actually probably it's either a net negative or a net neutral benefit to a person, which is I mean it's like that gets tricky, right? Like I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell a person, "Oh, don't go see a chiropractor," whatever,
Yeah,
but I would be prone to at least give the information that I am aware of being like, "Well, I mean, I don't know, you know.
that's
Go
true.
take a session, see how you feel. If you think that it's doing something for you, I guess you can keep going. If it's not, well, show them the door." Which, going back to mushrooms, this is the last thing I wanted to say about mushrooms.
Uh-huh.
So the one big net positive about mushrooms is that you can do such an intense amount of counseling in one session that a lot of people describe it as like I just did like 25 years of counseling or therapy in one session. Like you can drastically reduce the amount of time people spend in session, spend, you know, the money saved. You know what I mean? Like
I see.
it's a more efficient way to help people take care of themselves, basically. That's the one part that I get really excited thinking about, is that you're going to have people, because you have a lot of people who are, I mean, you have soldiers who have gone to war and have PTSD. You have people who have dealt with trauma in their lives from all kinds of things, and this can help them like get move on in their lives. So there, as far as I'm aware, there isn't anything like that for your muscles and bone structure, as far as I'm aware. I don't know.
Well,
I just want to interject real quick. I couldn't find much on the magnets with chiropractic. What they use is a magnetic field.
okay, so we're getting some insight from Dave right now. Go ahead, Dave, with us.
Yeah, I actually know because I was actually going to undergo this procedure, which they use a magnetic field and they point to a spot on your brain. I mean, it's all external. It's not invasive or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they just send this magnetic wave over and over and over, and they said it feels like a stabbing pain for a little bit, and you do it over 6 months, and it's supposed to help with depression. It has like a 40% success rate, but that's the only way I know of magnets.
Well, Dave, thanks for that, because I honestly don't know anything about this field. If there's now numbers being said about 40%, that's fine. I don't want to hate on the field of chiropractic or anything like that, because I know nothing about it.
Like, yeah, that's I don't know anything about it either. I just know, I just know that I'm probably never going to get a chiropractor. That's all.
Understood. Well, that I wanted to say one thing with the shrooms. It noted in the article that many have found it to help those in end-of-life crises, or that's where it's been found to be used a lot.
That's been a major, yeah. I mean, it has multiple uses, but I think that's been a big one for a lot of people dealing with terminal cancers, or just, yeah, like you were saying, end of life crises, people in hospice, things like that. It's also, I mean, there have been multiple psychedelic drugs that have helped with this, but it all has also been shown to help people dealing with addiction problems, depression, anxiety, the whole litany of things. It's just that as a practice right now, and part of the reason why I think the Canadian health minister is opening up to research right now is because there just hasn't been enough research done on the effects in a way that they can say, in a repeated statistical manner, to say like, okay, these are what you can expect if you take shrooms. So, because like right now, all it is anecdotal. So you have somebody who trips and they go, "Oh, my whole life was changed. I saw my past selves, et cetera, et cetera." Well, I mean, if you're a scientist, if you're somebody who's like doing a statistical analysis of this thing, you can't really. That isn't actually helpful to you. You can't really do anything with that.
Well, Matt, there's plenty of evidence out there already. There's tons of tech startup people out there taking psychs,
Oh
creating
yeah,
big
I mean,
companies.
I know, and that's the thing, is like, that's what's really fascinating about it, is it's such a disconnect between. It's one of those like disconnects between authority and establishment in people who are practical minded, like, because I don't doubt that like people in the tech world are taking shrooms, like microdosing shrooms and LSD, because it helps. Like, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it helps with their mental acuity and stuff like that. It's just, once again, because the substances were outlawed for so long, there's been no research done on them, so all you can go on is hearsay.
This might be that wave. That might be the start of that study, a much more serious study on them. I mean, I've always, for me, like, I've never taken any shrooms or any drugs in my life. So, and I always think of, the Who's the Tommy album. Not to date us, but
Everybody loves Pinball Wizard, though. Come on.
yes, everybody. including Generation Z. They're very much aware of it. um, no, but I mean that whole album Who's one of my favorite bands, and whether or not those ideas are expressed well in that album, but one of the ideas
They
is essentially
aren't,
about. There you go. Um, one of the ideas was behind it was dealing with how you don't need drugs to reach
right.
that kind of certain state. At least that's what Townsend was trying to push out for people with his album. Of course, most people don't know it; they just like the music, and that comes with everything. Same
Right.
with like the Pinball Wizard. Everyone loves that song.
Well, because like Pete Townsend was like kind of a big spiritual, highly existential, philosophical dude, right? Like, is he still alive? Or did he pass?
Yes, he's
Okay.
still alive. Him and Roger Daltrey are still
Yeah.
doing stuff.
Because like he's written like I would say the majority of the lyrics, right, in their discography, and a lot of them are like about being kind of spiritually lost in the world and not knowing what to do. I mean, like one of my favorite karaoke songs is "The Seeker." I can't remember which album that's from, but it's a fun song to sing.
I actually think that might have been a single. But
I think
yeah,
so.
I know what you're talking about with that. He actually talks. It's funny. I think they're probably their best album. And okay, this according to Americans, it's probably for American side, it's probably who's next.
Mhm.
Uh, and then which has like uh, Baba O'Reilly, or everyone knows as Teenage Wasteland.
Yeah, everybody
Um,
loves that song.
everyone loves that song, yes. And then, but my favorite one, is Quadrophenia.
I love
And that,
Conjure. That's a
yeah,
great album.
that is like, yeah, it's like a favorite of mine. And they, and it is about kind of that, put it as like teenage outcastism, and that's if
Sure.
that's a word, but it follows this character who is basically kind of just lost, and that is kind of I think just a common theme overall throughout their albums, uh, which makes the Who very depressing. But
They
you know,
are. They're very well. That's why they're blues music. Like, I mean, or I should say, they appropriated blues music, and they're very, you know, they're very honest about that, right? Like, but that was their big influence was the blues. So, like, yeah, a lot of it is depressing because they're kind of talking and wailing about these depressing topics that a lot of working class teenage boys go through, right? And that pretty much describes the Who in a nutshell.
this is true. This is true. Well, I think we should go on to our next. We could keep on talking about this all day, but
We
I guess
could
we should go.
have an entire seminar about that one
Yeah.
subject,
Yes.
but we should probably move on. This is more of a lightning round topic. I
Uh-huh.
thought this would have been interesting for the podcast.
Okay.
So, Living Proof Ministries leader Beth Moore called out Trumpism. So, like the general mood of especially evangelicals, like glomping onto Trump. There has been, what is his name? Jerry Falwell Jr. has been very buddy buddy with the Trump administration, and he
Uh-huh.
is the son of Jerry Falwell, who is a mega church dude. So I hate Jerry Falwell with a passion. Ever since I was a teenager, I would just like come across his show on TBN and just fume and frustrate and anger. But anyway, but this is a really interesting thing because I think we might be seeing the first signals of evangelicals starting to kind of change their tune towards that sort of um, really nasty conservatism. Maybe we'll see, but I like to see it. I like to see because this has been
Uh-huh.
okay. This has been something that has been bothering me for a while now, which is that I've been in Louisiana for the last couple of years talking with talking with some families, some neighbors about T Dog and
Good old T Dog.
good old T Dog, and a lot of them really like T Dog, and they would identify themselves as evangelical Christians. And I, having come out of that, having grown up in that atmosphere, and for some time having been, for a long time, I would consider myself having been a very devout Christian.
Mhm.
Um, I can't put those two things together. Like, T Dog is like has been in my mind basically the Antichrist, and I can't wrap my head around like how these devout Christians like him. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And as far as I could ever put together, in their minds, he represents, and I think this is a fair thing to say too, he has actually acted in a way that is positive to religious freedoms.
Mhm.
And in general, Christians see themselves as persecuted 9 times out of 10. And definitely see, like, the liberal left in Hollywood as like the engines of persecution. And curiously enough, they glommed on to T Dog, who I would say is the epitome of Hollywood liberalism. Like, I don't know how else you like, but because he called Mexicans rapists, suddenly they were all on his side.
Mhm.
Can you clear this one up for me, Soko? Because
I, I don't know with because you can always talk about it's mostly because he's associated with the Republican Party.
yeah,
That's who he's associated with. They and he was the guy, and he may have said these horrible things, but I don't know. As far as he also said things for them that he talks about, what is it like? His views on whether it be abortion or whether it be I don't know, religion, where religion should be. He's still kind of catered to them, even though he's done all these kind of uh, awful things in his life. I mean, and I don't know what to say. Like even though I think Democrats do it too, but
yeah.
um, of like just doing the catering to an audience. But
They've never done it in this same way. Like, I can't. I'm trying to figure out what the analogy would be of like. Well, of course, yeah, no, they have done it. Jeff Bezos is an excellent example. Um, yeah, it's that kind of hypocrisy that I can't get my head around, and it's especially with like evangelical Christians because like it made sense in the Bush years because Bush really played the part of like, I'm an evangelical Christian, I'm for y'all.
uh-huh.
But Trump doesn't give a fuck. Like, I mean, we all remember the whole like, you know, walking through rioting Washington D.C. with armed cops and whatever to go hold a Bible in front of a church half-heartedly and then walk back to the White House. Like, he's so, I think it, on one hand it's kind of amazing to me how blunt and like how little of a fuck he gives about it,
Yes.
because nobody else would have done it. Nobody else. But T Dog was like, yeah, okay, let's give them what they want, whatever. And then, did the thing. Um,
I,
Much like the Saturn Jupiter conjunction, I don't know what this means necessarily. I don't know how big of a church Beth Moore's church is, but from what I understand, it's at least considerable, right?
mhm.
And that sort of a move will, I'm sure, have some effect on future politics.
I don't know. I say that just because it probably just has to all deal with he's just associated with the Republican movement
Yeah.
now, uh, and he and the Democrats have just been demonized to such hate that. I mean, I don't know. If someone calls themselves a Republican, as long as it's not a Democrat, then that's fine. It doesn't matter. I,
Yeah,
I
I mean
mean,
that pretty much sums it up. Actually,
yeah. So, I
they're
mean,
like, "Oh, you're a Republican? Sure, come on board."
and keep in mind, like, even though I can't tell you from my own understanding of like the political history in the United States, but as far as I know, the evangelical Christians became kind of a big, more political bloc under Reagan,
Right.
and because, well, I mean, they started that to whereas a block of, or I mean, okay, to kind of put it this way, I mean, this not to say that these voters weren't voting before Reagan or anything, but they were now voting under this identity of Christian evangelicalism. Okay, he
Mhm.
appealed to that, which is something many, um, and keep in mind Reagan's coming out of post 60s, right?
Mhm.
So, and there is, I don't know what else to say on this, but he attracted those voters, right? And it's really that impression, as the saying goes, the what is it? A first impression is a lasting impression, right?
Yeah.
Is that how it goes? And
Yeah.
he left an impression on them, and it just stayed hold. Same with, also keep in mind, even with the black community too, for Democrats, 1960s as well.
Right.
Um, and I mean, many people from the black community vote Democrat now. A big, huge voting block. So, and it leaves a lasting impression for a lot of people. So I don't know, and that's probably just the real reason. I don't know if this is going to be a representation of that change. I was reading. I don't know much. When you sent this tweet, and actually I did see it a little before, but I had no idea who Beth Moore was. Did you know anything about them before?
No, no,
No.
not until
So
this moment.
yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen, if this is really a sign of, hey, this is a big change to it's the evangelical community is, well, I don't know where they're turning then, right? They're not going for
Yeah.
Trumpism. Where are they turning then?
Uh, Hobby Lobby. I don't know. I mean, it's not known for certain. And to me, it seems like big news in the sense that during the Trump years, I mean, we're still kind of in the Trump years, but um, there was zero, as far as I was aware, zero evangelical Christians like calling Trump out at all. Um, they had a pretty firm solidarity around the topic. And so I'm looking at that and I'm going, oh, okay, so that solidarity is beginning to break.
uh,
And that to me is like, okay, what happens next? Because as soon as one domino falls, kind of going in accord with what we were talking about last episode, as one domino falls, you can kind of start to wonder, okay, well, where will the rest of the dominoes go? Like, you know, I'm sure in 5 years, Jerry Falwell Jr.'s ministry is just going to be, the first chapter of QAnon, but like, uh, that doesn't necessarily say anything about the rest of like the evangelical group.
how old is Mr. Falwell?
I don't know. Oh, in the pictures, he looks like he's around 40-ish, 50-ish.
Okay.
He's going to be
Okay.
around for a while.
Okay.
He might try and run for president in a couple of years.
Well, I wonder about that. Who's going to be running for president next? On the
Everybody.
everybody on the next cycle.
We know
I
it's going to be Kanye.
Con- what do you think he's going to run? He's going to run for Democrat or Republican?
I think he's going to continue in the birthday party. He started his own brand. Why would he like Why would he betray it? You know?
I wonder. I actually think, I mean, that fellow we mentioned before, and right now what's happening with this our stimulus checks, right?
Hmm.
Josh Hawley and Sanders pushed for the 1,200. I don't know if any new news has come up. I think they went on and gave a partial funding of the government until tomorrow. I
Until
don't.
tomorrow.
Yes, yes. Supposedly they're going to meet and start to try to get this whole
Oh, this
stimulus thing.
happened. This happened a couple. Didn't this happen in the Obama years where we were like, it was just like kicking the can down the road for like a good
Yes.
couple of years of like, maybe the government will be open, maybe it won't. I don't know. Who cares?
Well, I from that I don't know. I'm not sure if you read more into Josh Hawley since that time.
I have
But
not, but have you?
I've read a little bit more, and
Okay.
all I'm thinking is I have a feeling this is the direction the Republican Party is going to take hold. Um, he
How would you
the,
describe that
he's
direction?
well, in this case he's talking about providing more services to people,
Okay.
more public services, I would say. But then also he doesn't. He still keeps to the kind of cultural right. Um, he still does not believe in. I don't think he.
So like very pro free speech. Is that
Uh, I think that anti-abortion.
okay?
He's still on those lines, but other things is whereas he's coming after kind of the corporate structure.
Hmm.
That is what he's going after.
That's interesting. I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah. So, and I was reading just, but keep in mind, my reading is coming from, well, Wikipedia, like everything comes, I
That's the
think,
thing.
from.
I mean, you gotta trust some source, or you have to at least like allow it to. That's the thing. Is like if we apply it appropriately, there is no trustable source of information in the world.
Well, I mean, I just haven't looked deeper into it, and
Yeah.
considering the article is really short, and I didn't even
Yeah.
look at the sources. So, not to hate on Wikipedia, but there are times whereas you can maybe you heard something in the news of a person, and somebody might have written an article on them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a. You can go read it, and you'll find that like there's a lack of citations. They just say stuff. Sometimes the sources are bad.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
so you have to be very careful. Some articles are fine, like if you're looking at really popular historical events, whether it be, I don't know, the French Revolution. Um, and yes, of course, there's always going to be different interpretations, but you'll find that there's a lot of people wanting to provide information on those subjects, and they're very thorough. And there's a
Right.
huge discussion still going on and on and on, and those are very informative to read. But not everything, especially if it's just this random celebrity you just heard about, and I don't know, you go on a wiki and it's like it's just a whole bunch of different nonsense.
Well, it's also true that Wikipedia was infamous for any random teenager to go on and change major text concerning either a city. I can remember a friend of ours went on and posted a caption underneath the picture of the then Hibernia Tower, just saying the horror, and it was up there for at least a good 2 days. Like,
Well, the Hibernia building was just people needed to be told what was actually happening. um, but yeah, so that my readings just really came from that,
yeah,
uh, and this could be this could be the direction for the Republican Party. Uh,
very
that
intriguing.
so I don't know though. I really don't know because the 1,200 stimulus was also a big him pushing for it was a big controversy for Republicans, I believe.
Yeah,
So But we shall see, as a very common phrase we always say on this
We
show.
will. Yeah, I mean it. We almost thought about naming that the show instead of "Welcome Back Biden," but I like "Welcome Back Biden."
I like Welcome Back Biden too, especially since we have backers like Mr. Joseph Biden. So I really want to go over another article with you. I know we have very short time.
Yeah.
And I actually, it was this article that I read. It just made my head roll so much. Our eyes
Is this a
rolled.
Salon article?
This is a Salon article, but maybe
We
for next.
we might need to dedicate an episode to
Is
the
that
Salon article
okay?
because it is. It might be a work of art in some ways.
Oh, I have some opinions on it. But yeah, let's wait for the next one because there's another pressing matter that our producer brought attention to us, right?
Oh yeah, this is a pretty big one too.
Yes.
Do you wanna go into it, Soko?
I guess so. This is actually dealing with the D. I forgot what the acronym stands
The
for.
DMCA.
DMCA. And it essentially, as I'm understanding, is that a senator in North Carolina is pushing for is it either a bill or amendment into a bigger bill, and what they're wanting is essentially to limit the fair use of music.
Right.
That, for example, social media stars like on Twitch or YouTube or whatever else, limiting essentially their use of music from all these kind of big companies, whether it be Sony, I think Warner Brothers, and so on. So essentially, as I'm understanding, this bill would, if you were to use this copyrighted material, you could face as a creator, you could face jail time for using it in your
Right.
TikTok video or your Twitch video or whatever it is. So I mean, it's horrendous
Pretty
stuff.
stunning.
It's a felony.
Yeah.
It's a pretty stunning bill to attempt to pass, and part of the so I did a little bit of digging into it, and it's I think one of the major platforms this is trying to get after is Twitch right now, because Twitch has become this gigantic thing over time. And if you go on Twitch, which I have been doing a lot more lately, it's almost like
Yeah.
pirate radio in some ways. It's kind of exciting. I like it, but there's a lot of boring crap on there too. I mean, you can just go to a channel and it's some e-girl staring at the camera talking about God knows what. I don't even know, but like blaring, some kind of, blaring hip hop or some popular music that an artist probably wants rights to. I mean, this kind of in some sense recalls a lot of the whole Napster fiasco back in the aughts. Which for those of y'all who don't remember, Napster was one of many software that
Created by Justin Timberlake, supposedly.
No,
I'm lying. I'm talking about social network reference. Justin Timberlake.
High schoolers such as me and Soko would regularly go onto and download whatever the hell we wanted for free. It was kind of amazing. That was the heyday of the internet in my mind, because basically it was anarchy. Like you could download whatever movie you wanted, any video game, any song, any album, free of charge, and it was part of a peer-to-peer network. This, of course, angered a lot of people because they weren't making money. Fair enough. They deserve right to their work.
Yeah.
But they got the government on their side, and so Napster was. I don't think it was banned, but it was like, I don't remember how the fallout went.
It got what was it? It got cut down a lot, meaning it still survived for a period. I don't think it's in existence anymore. And it I don't know what exactly happened, but it wasn't as over time. Essentially, it just became a the idea of peer-to-peer, it was just gone after a while, and
Right.
it just was kind of a useless.
And the
uh
dream died.
yes. Which is how, actually, we can go into that another time, because that's how a lot of stuff with policy stuff people will push to kill things,
Yeah.
make them absolutely useless, and then nobody wants to use it anymore. um but yeah, this is, it's funny, because I was thinking about this, how actually, for me anyway, for artists, and Matt, you can talk about this more, because you are a artist who essentially, I mean, you use your art to make your living.
Yeah.
And in this case, and the thing is, it's not really the artists that are complaining necessarily. There might be some, but it's really the
Sure.
big,
I mean, oh, are you
big,
talking about nowadays?
yeah. Well, in this case, well, I'm talking about with this act or whatever it's happening here
Yeah.
that this senator's pushing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was basically it's most likely the corporations, because the article mentions about who he gets his funding from,
Right.
who backs him, and it talks about Sony Music, it talks about Warner Brothers, it talks about uh, some of the other bigger studios that I can't even doesn't come to my mind immediately, and it's coming from them, and a lot of times these artists don't necessarily. And though it sounds like, hey, they're helping artists by making sure their material is not that they get, what's the word I'm looking for, credit for their material, they get money for their material, but that's
Yeah.
not what reality.
Compensated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it, compensation, but that's
They're
not what
not.
the case.
Artists are not getting jack shit nowadays, though. I mean, with
Yeah.
stuff like Spotify or Google Play, like you have to have millions and millions of hits for your song to make money for you. Like most artists nowadays are making money through live acts, which are almost basically outlawed right now for at least the next until June, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely one of those things that benefits primarily the distributors. Um, it's been part of a long-term trend that I would say began with the Napster thing, right? A
Uh-huh.
long-term trend of money and power taking over the internet, and this is just like another attempt at strangling the damn thing to death. Um, I can only hope with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction that we see some major revolution where somebody creates a decentralized version of the internet where the dream can live on. But at this time, the empire has struck back in a hard way.
And it's probably gonna go through. I don't doubt it. This Wait, did it go through? Did it say it go through? I forgot. Did it
I
say?
don't, I don't know that part. I
Okay.
will say though, and this was something that I had brought up in a previous conversation with somebody else, but so I mean, technically, showing The Lion King to your English 2 class is a federal felony, right? Like you remember on
I
video cassettes and DVDs, you have the big FBI warning about don't copy or distribute material, blah blah blah.
yeah,
Uh,
I remember that actually back in my college days, to where I it was actually at my, like, at one of the dormitories I was working in, um, and we heard a story that, because they wanted to put like movie events for students,
yeah,
um, but they couldn't, because of one time somebody wanted to put, I don't know, have like a movie in the lounge on some sort of movie, and a uh, a cease and desist order came for them from some company. Mostly, and it was mostly because one of the students, I guess living in a dorm, told their parents, who happened to be an attorney for one of these big corporations, and they sent a cease and desist order, and they could not put on any of these public events anymore, talking about, hey, we're doing a Lion King showing or whatever it is. They wouldn't let people, organize to have a good time. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Matt. You're about to say something.
no, I was just sighing. I was sighing because it's just like the government. Sometimes I feel like the government is not interested in people having a good time. and that's sometimes where my more libertarian styled political leanings come from, is like really dumb shit like that. It's always that's the thing about living in a society, is you're always constantly in some weird compromise between your own interests and the interests of somebody else. And a lot of times the somebody else is somebody who has more power than you ever want to have to deal with. Like it's Warner Brothers, who are angry about you watching Batman for the fifth time in your science class. I don't know why you watch Batman science class, but
At the appropriate time, especially when you're studying bats, what can happen? Oh no, it's. I mean, I understand the idea of with regulations, and it can be frustrating. Certainly, I think everyone always has that moment. Whereas, oh, I love the law today because it benefited me, but then I hate the law today because it did not benefit me. Right?
yeah, I would be curious to know the ratio between the one and the other. Like, how many times do people like bless the law versus curse the law? Because I would guess it leans more towards cursing the law.
Well, I can always think of like people to be like, oh, that's the law. Okay, I'll just stick with it. It's only until when they,
Yeah, exactly.
it's only when until like it hurts, like we're like, I can't do something, then they just start cursing about it. Um, so I don't know. It's one of that's the thing with the law. It doesn't. It's not really the um what is it? It doesn't mean it's if there's a law, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to benefit you or anything.
No, it rarely does. It rarely benefits anybody, but this one will definitely benefit somebody, and it's somebody we all kind of resent. So
yes, which yeah, a lot of the country resents. I would say, I would say. I it is funny. I remember. See, the thing is like, and I don't want to take up too. But I'm just going to take up maybe a couple more minutes here. Because this is actually kind of a pretty interesting topic that we could probably talk into a later episode. I always kind of remember this. I mean, there's some things about it with copyright and such, and corporations having such a control over this kind of material. Uh, and we have these big studios and such because, well, studios found it as a way that artists needed a way to be promoted, and they decided to essentially provide them a service, right?
Mhm.
And it's been a good and bad thing for artists. Uh, for some, it's been restrictive uh, of their ability to create things that
Right.
they want. So, because some of like, and I'm only talking about in the world of music, and mainly with rock of the stories I've read. And artists, they sign them these big album deals, like, oh, we got a contract, and they have to do like 4 or 5 albums. And then the studio basically dictates they make one really great album, the first or second album, and then they want to do something totally different in the third album. But the studio essentially comes down on them and says, no, you can't make that. That's not the sound that people like right now. You have to stick to
Right.
this sound. And that tends to limit the artist's ability to create. But with that, there's also that relationship, the balance of if they didn't have that studio to help with the promotion, the marketing, and everything too, they wouldn't have been able to get so big.
Yeah,
Uh,
and in some situations too, like you get access to. I mean, you get straight up access to recording resources you might not have had previously.
mhm.
Um, Money, a major resource to get some stuff
Especially
done.
money, especially money. Yeah.
It's whenever you're dealing with bigger corporations or the government, you're always in some kind of a tightrope walk. And for some people, it might actually boost their creative potential, but for a lot of people, I mean, Frank Zappa had, I think, as an example, he's one of my favorite examples. Frank
Mm,
Zappa had like a record deal for like 4 albums, I think, with Warner Brothers, and his whole Like once he figured out what all that meant, he like made 4 albums in a year and told them to fuck off and started his own independent label. And he was like I think he was one of the only dudes who ever did that. Who had like his own independent label, was a musician. Like he got Alice Cooper started. Like
Yeah.
a very rare person in that sense.
Say, have do you know much with Prince?
Oh, I don't know much about Prince. Then
Well,
please let me.
you know, okay, everyone always Prince has always made fun of his eccentricism, right? And I think you remember back in the day as he had when we were kind of growing up, and I recall us even in our group of friends kind of making fun of it. The artist formerly known as Prince, right? The symbol.
Right.
He did that for a reason, actually. Though it wasn't because he was just being his eccentric self. He what was it? It was actually because of a contract. And
Oh,
I think he couldn't use his name or something like that.
okay.
So he came up with that whole symbol to basically to kind of work around this little whole thing.
Yeah, I mean it was
Um,
odd, but I mean it did work because everybody still called him Prince, right? But he was like, I can only go on my albums as the artist formerly
I
known
mean,
as Prince. And I mean it worked for him. God
yeah.
bless.
And there's so many other stories I could think of with musicians. But I think that's for another time, considering that we are at the end of the hour.
And it
Okay.
is that time where we announce the DogeCoin.
Dogecoin.
1
Okay,
second. We
go
have
for it.
actually been having this is pretty huge because Bitcoin has had an insane rally the last couple of days. So Dogecoin is now at 0.003972. So we're getting into the 0.004 range. We might be getting to a hay penny one day at this rate. I'm pretty excited about it.
Could get there, Matt. Could get there. You could be a very, very rich man.
The big $1. I bought some Dogecoin this week, so
There you go. All right, Matt. Okay, it's time to go. Until next time.
until next time.
All right. Catch you later.
All right, bye y'all.